Welcome back to our circle of healing and recovery. The elders say it's important for us to practice silence. They say, whenever we get together as a group or as an individual, we should start by being still. I want you to take the next 2 minutes to get quiet and say a prayer to our Creator and ask Him to put words and thoughts in your mind which will help you focus.
Welcome back to recovery as a process, not an event. And where we are in this recovery process is at the point between the 5th step and the 6th step, a crossing over point for many of us, where the past is merely information that we can use to create a future that's better, more healthy, more positive, more joyful for ourselves and people around us than anything we've experienced before. So we'll move along with the instructions, and the 6th step says we're entirely ready to have God remove our defects of character. Now, where would we find the instructions for this? Well, we would look in the normal place that we would go for instructions in the big book, the recovery text, and we would find the instructions starting on page 75. There's a very little piece here that bridges between step 5 and 6 that I just want to cover. It says, returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour. Carefully reviewing what we have done, we thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know Him better. Taking this book down from the shelf, we turn to the page which contains the 12 steps. Carefully reading the first 5, we ask if we have omitted anything. For we are building an arch through which we shall walk a free man at last. And it's instructing us to just have a look. Did we do the work to the best of our ability? Have we done it solidly and completely in the first 5? Then it goes on, and the instructions are quite brief in this book. And it says, if we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we admitted are objectionable? Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things that we have admitted are objectionable? Someone else gets to choose. Doesn't say that there's this whole list of things that, if you're not this, you're not okay. It says the things that we have found objectionable. And we've used the process up to this point to uncover and discover those things that are now objectionable to us. Why would they be objectionable to us? Because they're causing us not to have the life we choose to have, or to be the person we choose to be, or to grow spiritually the way we'd like to grow. Can he now have all of them? So that's the instructions for the 6th step. My speculation is the first 100 people hadn't had a lot of time and experience with this 6th step. There's not a lot of instructions, but the instructions are really clear. The things that are objectionable to us, are we willing to have them removed? Why wouldn't we be willing to have them removed if they're now objectionable to us? The problem before was they weren't objectionable to me. I liked being this same old. Well, by the time we got into the steps and we did the work in the first step and the 2nd step and the 3rd step and the 4th step and the 5th step, they're now objectionable to me. I choose not to have these kind of things in my life, this kind of thinking, this kind of beliefs, this kind of behavior, kind of habits, attitudes. But I don't have to try to fix myself. It doesn't say here, now that I've found them, I go change them. Am I willing to have them removed? I'm not even asking to have them removed yet in the 6th step. Am I willing to have them removed? Now, sometimes this is not quite as easy as it seems on the surface. I know the first time I came through the steps, I got here and I had taken my work from my 4th step and my 5th step, And I'd followed the instructions, and I'd consolidated those onto a list. I had this piece of paper, and I wrote down the names of all of the character defects I could think of. And then I started putting little tick marks behind them as they reoccurred. Some of them had a whole lot of tick marks, and some only had a few, so I could see where the high leverage points were. And then I looked at that, and I had 27 names of character defects on this long sheet. And I thought, this is my character. If I were to have these removed, there would be nothing left. So it's like thinking, God, please kill me. That's how it felt. If I remove all these features from my character, what would be left? So I found this a very difficult step the first time through. Now today we know how to do it a little bit different, and we use some tools for willingness here. So part of how we ask people to work on these steps is from the fourth and fifth step, consolidate onto a sheet the list of all of these defects, name them, and get your tick marks however you get there so that you know exactly which ones are causing you the most dilemmas in your life. Now when you've got that, we use mind mapping again to map out for each defect a descriptor of what life will be like when I don't have that problem. So if my defect is dishonesty, then I put honesty at the center of my mind map, and I start to describe how that will manifest itself in my life. So at work, what will honesty look like? Between me and my boss, between me and my colleagues, between myself and my clients. Right? At home, how will that look? Tell the truth with integrity. You know? So I go off all these different branches of how I will behave and speak in an honest way. Okay, when I get that mind map filled out, I have a description now of what it's going to be like when the problem goes away. And I go through that same exercise for every one of my defects. What I'm doing is I'm painting a picture of hope again. See, I'm no longer going into the unknown, I'm going towards the known. So I start to step into the possibilities of a life without my character repeating itself over and over again in a positive, joyful way. So I'm drawn towards it. I'm creating willingness by describing what life will be like without the defect. What will be in its place for each one of these. Now, I'm no longer, when I get ready to do my seventh step, going and asking to be killed by destroying all of my character features. I'm going to go in with a request to help these go away and replace them with these. I find I'm much more willing now to complete my sixth step because I'm looking at the positive side of it. So it's a means of building the willingness. And the sixth step is a willingness step. It's all about willingness. It's about clarity in willingness. What exactly is it in my character that has become objectionable to me? What are these barriers to my success, these habits, attitudes, beliefs, and expectations that are now liabilities that I once thought were assets? And am I willing to have them taken away? Yes, if I can see what the alternative would be. And if I can't think up what the alternative would be, well, I can look at how other people lead their lives, and I can read books, and I can talk to sponsors and friends. Friends who have the character features I want, not the ones who have the ones that I don't want. Right? So that is how the sixth step goes these days. Now, let's build a little bit on why would I do it that way? By looking a little bit more at this self-talk cycle. The self-esteem cycle, as it's sometimes called. See, as I talk to myself, I reinforce who I am. So when I have something goes on in my life, I start a conversation with myself about that. And that conversation reinforces my self-image, my description to myself of who I am. The way I reinforce my self-image creates how my life goes. How my life goes triggers my self-talk, which triggers my self-image, which triggers my life, self-talk, self-image, and it goes this way. So if I want some leverage points here, then changing the way I describe myself to myself is a really high leverage point. Part of what I've just talked about with this 6-step exercise is a means of describing ourselves differently to ourselves. Who am I when I am honest? And how does that manifest itself in my life? I certainly have lots of evidence of who I am when I'm dishonest, if that's what my character defect is. Right? Who am I when I am filled with faith versus filled with fear? I describe that to myself. Right? And then that sets a whole different cycle in motion. So I can change this picture with my own self-talk and with the help of the Creator, as we'll see how we use the 7th step. So the self-talk cycle, the self-esteem cycle, is the leverage point for this change when we're moving from character features that we choose not to have anymore to new ones that are more appropriate to the person we're trying to become, that we will become, because of our visions in our 2nd step, 3rd step, 4th step, and the work of the rest of the steps. As I think I am, that's the point, right? As I think I am. So how do I think? Well, we're now ready to move to the 7th step, which is humbly ask Him, humbly ask the Creator to remove our shortcomings. Or said another way, those things that we now find objectionable. So we worked on readiness and willingness in the 6th step. And now we're into action again in the 7th step. We're going to this power greater than ourselves that we've been building a relationship as we've come through these steps with a specific request. Please, God, Creator, higher power, remove from me these specific things that have become liabilities to my having the kind of life and being the kind of person that I choose to be. In their place, please give me their opposites. Give me the character that would be more appropriate to the person that I have described myself to be in my 2nd step vision. So when you're talking about what you do want, check it back against your 2nd step vision of how you said you wanted your life to go. It should be in harmony and alignment with that. That's the person you're choosing to become. So there's a very brief set of instructions on page 76 in the book. And then there is a 7th step prayer, which we usually take, which is a means of following a structured approach. Now, the words in the book, again, they're very good. I always use them because that may be the channel that God's tuned to. I also do this in my own words. So we'll expect that you can find those instructions in the book. Do that prayer typically with another person is a good way to do it. And mean it. Today, right now, I choose to no longer have these character features in my life. From here forward, please cast them out from me and let me be this new person. Now, when I first came through these steps, I was convinced that they tricked me, and the 7th step was the one step that didn't work. I really thought it was a big sucker game, and I'd finally come to the point where it broke down. I got all the way to here. I had all this information from my steps up till now. I had this list of 27 character defects, and they looked kind of unattractive to me. They were certainly objectionable when they're all written out on a piece of paper like that describing me. And I went into the 7th step, and I really did want to have them taken away. And I did this prayer, and I asked God to remove them, and darned if they didn't all get worse. Every blooming one of them got worse. And I couldn't figure it out. I thought, what is this about? And now, in hindsight, I can see what I got was nearly what I asked for. I asked to have them removed, and what I got was a spotlight that showed me not only occasionally was I doing these things and acting and thinking this way, but it was in almost every part of my life all the time. And maybe it was just that I wasn't quite willing, I don't know, but I certainly got a lot more willing. With every passing day, I got more and more uncomfortable being that person, to the degree that I wanted to throw up some days, because I would say, you know, I've asked for these to be removed, and here it is again, and here it is again, and here it is again. When is it going to go away, God? And Don talked about, you know, putting the cake in the oven and opening the door to see how it's doing. Well, I was doing a lot of that. So you done yet, God? You're taking away my dishonesty? You're taking away my lust? You're taking away my fear? Well, cake wasn't baked. But eventually, when I got tired enough of being that person, having those things popping up in my life, one by one, I found alternatives to them. But today, I know the easier way is to find the alternatives first and then go to the Creator with the request. And I line up my mental energy, my thoughts on what I do want, as opposed to constantly looking in the spotlight and seeing what I don't want. And we'll talk a little bit about how to use some of that in with the 7th step. Now, we said earlier that self-talk can be called affirmations. Positively, deliberately crafted statements of self-talk can be called affirmations. And they're a means of reprogramming ourselves, our autopilot system. So we would use affirmation and visualization along with the 7th step to work collaboratively with the Creator to create the future that we want. We're not taking a hold of our own thinking and behavior and changing ourselves without the Creator. I wouldn't encourage that. But I would encourage us to use the knowledge we have to co-create here. And affirmation and visualization is a means of doing that. While God's got the cake in the oven, we can keep ourselves distracted by describing over and over to ourselves what it's going to be like when we're the new person we're choosing to be. So we get so excited looking for that we go in search of it and become it. So when God opens the door, I think in the old way I did it, it was like I was asking God to take away my character pieces I didn't want, and then I was doing a little bit of arm wrestling, and God would move it. Not so fast. I wasn't quite. But with this approach, I am pulling it through when it clicks in for me that, oh, this is what honesty feels like. I'll have more of that, please. And when the Creator puts someone in front of me who manifests the characteristics that I've never experienced before, I can see them because I'm looking for them. Oh, that's what a person with integrity is like. I often wondered what they were like. Right? So that's the piece that we find here with affirmation and visualization. Now, so what I'm going to do is I want to do a little sort of tutorial, a very quick one, on crafting these self-talk statements. So I'll have you look in your workbooks, and there's a piece in here about writing affirmations. And it has some very specific instructions, and I'm not going to go through this in detail because it is in your workbook, but I will talk about some of the characteristics of powerful affirmations. And that would be ones that print easily into our subconscious mind. So here are some things that they would need to be. They would need to be personal. In other words, I can affirm for myself, but not for you, or my wife, or the person at the traffic light that doesn't know how to drive their car. I'm the only one who can talk in my head, so I'm crafting my own self-talk statements. They need to be positive, describing what I am like when I'm in the new state. So, for example, I don't say that I'm no longer going to be lazy. I talk about how energetic I'm going to be. They need to be in the present tense. We don't want to get stuck on someday island. Someday we want to be in the now, as if it's already done. They indicate achievement. In other words, we don't write an affirmation that says, I can change. I have changed. I am the new. Right? We describe what the change is and what the new is. They're not comparative. I don't compare my state to someone else's. I'm better than Joe Bloggs. Or, right, I'm just describing me relative to me. They should include action words, emotion words, because those trigger pictures. Remember we talked about images and vividness prints it more strongly in reality. So when we use action words and emotion words, they trigger more imagination and more vividness, so it prints more strongly. It should be as accurate as possible. So for example, if I'm affirming a weight loss or a weight gain, I might be very specific that I'm happy and healthy at my ideal weight of 175 pounds. Because later on when I use that with a visualization, I will want to know specifically where that scale is going to come to when I'm looking down at the scale in the morning in my mind, in my middle mental simulator. Where exactly is that scale going to stop? Well, it's going to stop exactly at 175 pounds. Right? They should be balanced. Sometimes when people get a hold of this stuff, and it's so powerful that they write 27 affirmations about money and one about being a nice person. Balance them up. We're talking about physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, in all the facets of your life. And then look for where there are conflicts between one area and another. Now there's an instruction which is at the very end which says they should be realistic. What does realistic mean? Well, for me, realistic is just right out past the edge of what you can possibly believe and maybe a little bit more. That's realistic. Except stepping into the mystery, as Don said. Right? It's out past anything you've ever experienced. It's still realistic. And I always, one that's quite funny when you're talking about money with people, is everybody can relate to money, so we use these examples. It's, if I'm making $1,000 a month, I might have difficulty if I had an affirmation to be a zillionaire. I don't know any of those. But I could put an affirmation down to be making twice as much as I'm making because I'm spending that much already. See? It's realistic. I can comprehend those size numbers. Yeah? So then there's a piece that says keep it to yourself. Now, that's an interesting one. Keep it to yourself except for those people who will support you in your change. Many of us come from low self-esteem families and environments. Why would someone who's got low self-esteem themselves want to help you grow? They might be very generous in helping to explain to you why these things will never work. Now, if you have friends around who are supportive, who are growing, that's a different story. And if you're in a relationship and you're growing together, that's a different story. But, if you put these up on your cubicle at work, don't expect your cube mates to be all that excited about how you're developing into this spiritually growing person. And they might kid you a bit, which would sort of bring this back down. Why set yourself up for that? Right? Keep them to yourselves that only you can talk to you. And these are discussions that you're going to have with you. So when you've done these, you might use them on like little 3x5 index cards or something. You make a stack of these. And then every morning and then through your day, you just flip through these. Instead of letting your mind randomly get 50,000 sound bites a day, fill some of them up with some that you've deliberately crafted that will pull you towards the future, the person you choose to be. And they're in harmony and alignment with the request you've just made to the Creator to help you be that person. So maybe instead of resisting the change, as God starts to bring about that change, you will be drawn towards it. You'll be looking forward to it. So the change will be positive, not fearful. Very, very powerful, this affirmation. Now, there's another piece of this which is called visualization, which is using mental simulation. And many people think, oh, I can't do that. Well, let me just give you a quick example of maybe you could. So would you just close your eyes for a minute, and I'll give you a little quick exercise. So in your mind now, you're in a kitchen, and you go to the refrigerator, and inside of the refrigerator, after you open the door, you find there's a nice ripe lemon. So you take the lemon in your hand, take it from the refrigerator, close the door, walk to a counter where there's a flat surface, and you find a knife nearby. You lay the lemon on the flat surface and roll it under your palm against the flat surface. It gets nice and juicy. And you hold it with one hand, and then you take the knife and you slice it through with the other. And the juice sort of spurts out. Now you take one half of that lemon and bring it up under your nose. You smell that lemon juice. Now just take a nice suck on that lemon. Yes? How many people tasted that lemon juice? Many of you did. That's nothing. There was no lemon in this room. There was no lemon juice in your mouth. But you quite vividly got a sense of tasting that shock from that sharp lemon juice in your mouth. The human mind is very capable of simulation, sometimes self-guided or other-guided. So what we do with these affirmations once we have them is we build little simulation around them for ourselves, a scenario in our mind, a mental image of how that affirmation manifests itself in our life. So for each affirmation, you might create one or two or more little mental scenarios. So when you're doing you don't just read the affirmation, you read it and then you visualize that actually happening in your life. So the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between something that's actually happening and something that's vividly imagined. If you don't believe that, think about jealousy and what effect it has in our system, or resentments, where we relive situations that may or may not have ever happened before with great vividness. Subconscious mind doesn't differentiate between things that are vividly imagined and things that are actually happening. We don't print the actual event. What we print is what we're saying to ourselves about the event, whether it happened or not. And in one of these recovery group meetings one time, someone was talking about projection, which is a means of mental simulation. And someone said something I found quite funny. They said, I've lived a terrible life, but fortunately for me, most of it never happened. I think we'll leave this section right there. That's a good place to end with our discussion on Step 6 and 7.
Now is a good time to utilize a talking circle with your group. Focus on a subject which was discussed on the tape. The manner with which we walk through life is each man's most important responsibility. We should remember this with every new sunrise. Thomas Yellowtail, Crow.